Alright guys, so in this video, what we'll be doing is we're going to be removing our brake system off the go-kart. We're going to remove it so we can take it over to the table, drain all the old fluid out of it, and then we'll put it back on the cart and we'll get some new fluid in it. This is a process that I go through every year on my go-kart, just to ensure that while my driver's out on the track, that we're being as safe as possible. You do not want to have a brake failure while your driver's out on the track. Those are never any good. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to quickly remove this brake system from the go-kart so we can get the fluid replaced. And your system may not be this exactly the same as this one. I believe they all work the same. They've got a master cylinder, and then you've got your brake caliper, and your brake caliper is usually where the drains are. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull this thing off. Real quick. Safety cable. Get the arm detached from the brake here. Make sure you don't lose any of your hardware. And this is something you'll usually probably only need to do once a year. I usually do it at the first of the year, but for the sake of making these videos, I'm doing it here at the end of the season. Alright, so we got our caliper loose. Let's go ahead and remove the rod here. It's also a good time to clean all this stuff up. A lot of this stuff's hard to get to while it's all put on the cart, so definitely take advantage of being able to clean all this stuff off once you've got it all removed. All right, and then we'll come over to this side. We'll pull the caliper off. Got 2 bolts that hold the caliper on. Yeah, and it looks like we'll probably need to loosen up the disc. So we can slide this off. It's already loose. There we go. All right. And try not to let anything fall and smack against the ground. Just do this nice and gently. Okay, so here's our brake system. We'll take this over to the table, we'll drain the fluid out of it, give it a good cleaning, and then we'll get it reinstalled back on the cart. Okay guys, so we're over here at the table. Let's go ahead and get this fluid drained out. And you're gonna have to bear with me. This is the first time I've actually attempted doing this on a table like this, so we'll kind of see how this goes. Normally I just kind of pull it off and just kind of hold it up with my hands in the garage. So we'll do it over here on the table for you real quick. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to remove my brake pads so we don't get fluid all over the pads. So we'll get these pulled out real quick. We can clean all that up too while they're pulled out of here. Go ahead and pull those pads out. Okay, so now we got our pads out. What we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna drain it out through the drain holes in the caliper. So we'll set that in there so we're not leaking all over everything and making a mess. And what we'll do is we'll crack both of the drains loose. And pull those out. That's an 8. Go ahead and get these loosened up. Both sides. Make sure both those drains are loose. Let's hold this up and see if we can start getting some of this fluid to drain out. So what I'm gonna do is we've got the 2 fill holes on our master cylinder. I'm gonna remove the caps on these. Now that we got a little bit of the fluid out so we don't spill all over the place. Now we should be able to lift this up and get this fluid to drain out for us. Make sure we get as much as we can to drain out of here. That's draining. And on our master cylinder, we've actually got these two reserve reservoirs. We're going to want to open these up as well. And drain the fluid out of these guys. And like I said, I apologize. This is kind of awkward trying to do this on the table. Looks like we've got most of it. And if you can see this thing, I mean, it's pretty dirty. There's a bunch of dirt that just gets up inside the little spaces that you really can't get to with a rag while this is on the go-kart. So what I'm gonna do now, and not bore you guys with it, is I'm just gonna clean this up with a rag, get it all real nice and clean. And then we'll go back to the go-kart, we'll install this back on the go-kart, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get the new fluid put back in. Okay, so I've gone ahead, I've cleaned everything up. I've got the master cylinder and the caliper reinstalled onto the go-kart. So from here, we're going to want to put in our new fluid. And to do this, you're going to need a brake bleeder. This is the one I use. It's got a little valve on here so you can either open or close it. And obviously if you open it, it's going to let the fluid from inside the reservoir up there flow down into the system. So what we'll do is we're going to screw this into our master cylinder. So let's take the cap off. And what I'll do is I'll pull out one of the caps to the master cylinder. We'll start with this one on this side. And then what we'll do is we're going to screw the brake bleeder into the master cylinder. Just like that. And once we've got that screwed on, we can go ahead and put our brake fluid in here. You're going to want to use whatever brake fluid is recommended for your go-kart. They all take different fluids, so make sure you're using the correct fluid. And we're just going to go ahead and fill this reservoir up. Just like that. And if you ever worked with brake fluid, you know how nasty and slippery that stuff is. So now that we've got that reservoir filled up, let's go ahead and start letting it into our system. So what I'm gonna do is we'll grab, I've got a bottle here with just a little piece of brake line drilled through the cap there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this over the drain nipple. Just like so. And then what I'll do is I'll actually open it up so that we can get fluid to run through the entire system and start flowing out into this bottle. And I've just got this bottle just dangling down here at the bottom. You really can't see it because of the side pod. And then what I'll do is I'll open up the valve here, And we're just gonna wait for fluid to slowly run through and start pouring out into the bottle. It's gonna be hard for you to see. Wish I would have had some clear brake line, might have been a little better. And we're just gonna wait, and we'll wait for that, wait for gravity to fill our system up. And once the brake fluid starts running out and dripping into the bottle, we can go ahead and close up that drain plug and move on to the other side. Not seeing any fluid yet. And there we go. So let's see if I can move the camera. You see down there in that bottle, you can see that I've actually got fluid running all the way through, and now it's dripping down into my bottle. So I'll just let that run for just a little bit. I don't want to waste too much fluid. But, and if you hold the tube up like this, you can also see if there's any air bubbles in there as well. And it looks pretty good, so what I'm going to do is hurry and close this off. Try not to spill fluid everywhere. Alright, that is closed. Remove the bottle here, and you can see I've got some fluid down here in the bottom of the bottle that ran all the way through the system. And then what you're going to do is kind of just bounce the brake pedal a little bit. And what you'll see, hopefully you can see it here, is we'll get a little bit of air bubbles coming through here as we bounce this a little bit. And then what we'll do is we'll just close this guy off. Make sure you put the cap on the top of your brake bleeder. Couldn't tell you how many times I've spilled brake fluid all over my garage floor by not remembering to put that in. And we're just going to remove the brake bleeder from the master cylinder. Just like that. And then what I like to do is I'll pull the screw out of the other side. Drop the screw in the side that we just finished. And then I'll put my brake bleeder in this side so I'm not accidentally spilling this thing and getting fluid all over the place and wasting a bunch of brake fluid. Just like that. We'll go ahead and close this side up. Alright, that side should be done. Let's go ahead and do the other side. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to put my bottle on the other side. Find my 8mm, and I'm going to open this drain or bleed valve. And we'll do the same thing. Go ahead And I'll open the valve and we'll let gravity take the fluid through the system until it drains out the other side. And I like to keep this reservoir as full as possible. The more weight you have in there, the quicker the fluid will run through for you. And we'll just wait until we start seeing fluid drip through. Looks like we got a pretty good steady stream. Looks good. So I'll tighten this side off. Remove our drain bottle. You can see all the fluid that has ran through the system. And we'll go ahead and we'll close our valve, or we'll bounce the brake a little bit just to get any air bubbles that might be in there out. Looks pretty good. Okay, let's close our valve. Remove the bleeder from the master cylinder. And then what I'm going to do now before I go any further is get all the fluid out of this bleeder back into my bottle. Just trying to avoid making any more of a mess than I need to. Okay, so we're done with our brake bleeder. Put the top back on, set it aside. Let's make sure we get the cap back on our brake fluid so we don't knock it over. And let's go ahead and put the top of our plug back in the master cylinder there. And it's inevitable, some fluid's gonna spill out. Just make sure you have a rag so you can clean it up. Make sure both of these are tight. Like so. All right. So now with our system, I have these reservoirs, and we're gonna wanna make sure we get a little fluid in our reservoir. And to do this, I just use a little syringe. Hopefully I've got one handy. So I just use a little syringe, and what I'll do is I'll just put this down into my bottle of brake fluid, suck a little bit out, and I'll use that to fill up these reservoirs. So we can do that real quick. Just suck up a little bit of fluid into my syringe here. like that. And I'll just squirt it into my reservoir. And I like to fill these things up about 1/3 of the way full. Usually about 1 full syringe is pretty good. And you'll want both sides to be pretty even when you do this. Just go ahead and fill up both sides with a little bit of fluid. Just kind of eyeball it to make sure they're both pretty close. Looks pretty good. Put the cap back on our fluid. Then we can put our reservoir caps back on. Okay. All right, job is done. Let's pull the brake just to make sure it doesn't have any sponge to it and it's nice and stiff. Go ahead and make sure it's gripping. That feels pretty good. All right. So job is complete. We've drained and refilled the fluid in our brake lines. Definitely something I'd highly recommend you do at least once a year. Like I said, I usually do it at the first of the year, but just so I could make this video and get it out to you guys, I've gone ahead and done it. Our year just finished up. But you don't want to have your brakes going out on your driver while he's on the track. That definitely wouldn't be good. So you're going to want to make sure that you're maintaining these. You're constantly checking the fluid in these reservoirs to make sure that they're not dry and that your brakes are working for your driver the way they need to be. So definitely something that you're going to want to put in your maintenance plan. Make sure that you're doing it consistently. Also, make sure you're using the correct brake fluid for the type of system that you have or whatever the manufacturer recommends. Get yourself a brake bleeder. They make a lot of different kinds. This is a universal one. You can get different tips to fit different types of master cylinders, which makes it real nice. So go ahead, put this process into your maintenance plan and have a good time at the track.